Tommy Robinson has today been committed to prison for 18 months, less the 3 days that he spent in custody, for contempt of court for breaching an injunction. Some of you may not understand what that injunction was about. Some of you may disagree with the decision or even the substantive decision behind the original defamation case against him. And some of you may be worried about him going to prison given the current situation. So a few of these things I'd like to address for you in this video and hopefully make them easy to understand. But first of all, I'd be very grateful if you would hit the subscribe button to my channel, help my channel grow so I can help many more people understand the situation, because that's how my channel grows. And if you like the video and you also hit the notification bell, that helps YouTube to spread my video to a wider audience as well. So first of all, the substantive case against him was one of defamation. And without going into the details of that case, the bottom line is he lost the case and the court then ordered him not to repeat those defamatory statements. Those defamatory statements later became the substance of a film that Tommy Robinson published in Trafalgar Square and on the X platform and in interviews and so on. And that's what formed the substantive matter of the contempt of court. Now, this contempt application came about because of a deliberate breach of this injunction. An injunction is an order of the court either to do something or not to do something. Very broadly speaking. And so in this case, it was an order against Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, not to repeat the defamatory statements, which he admitted doing so. And therefore, the Solicitor General actually brought 2 applications for contempt of court, between them setting out 10 separate alleged breaches of this injunction by Tommy Robinson. And in short, Tommy Robinson this morning admitted that he breached this injunction on the occasions and in the manner alleged by the Solicitor General. Now, if you deliberately defy an order of the court, you can be held in contempt and therefore fined, imprisoned, or both. And you can also be ordered to pay the costs of the application, which I'll come back to in a moment. Now, some of you may disagree with this, and some of you may even disagree with the substantive case, a point which the judge did make reference to in the written reasons here. The judge says in paragraph 3.1, a party who has lost a case is entitled to appeal. They are entitled to disagree with the result. They are entitled to criticise the result, but they are not entitled to disobey a court injunction. And so that really goes for everybody. Everybody is entitled to disagree with the result. Everybody is entitled to criticise a result. But no one is entitled to disobey an order of the court. The judge says in a democratic society underpinned by the rule of law, court injunctions must be obeyed. Nobody is above the law. Now, in this case, the judge applied very broadly the same approach to other criminal cases, even though contempt of court comes under common law, underpinned by statute and rules, but applied the same approach to criminal cases nonetheless, which is culpability and harm. That is, what role did the person have and what harm has it caused? The judge approached these separately, as he would any other criminal case, and said that Tommy Robinson had indicated what he was planning to do in advance of the injunction. The injunction was intended to protect the claimant's rights, the claimant in the substantive case, by prohibiting the very conduct in which Tommy Robinson had subsequently engaged. He was well aware of the terms of the injunction and the consequences of breaching it. The breaches were not accidental or negligent or merely reckless. Each breach of the injunction was considered planned, deliberate, direct, flagrant breach of the court's order, in disregard of the original claimant's rights. Many of the breaches, the judge said, took place over a sustained period, not only involving an interview, film, but also uploaded on the internet, social media, and so on. The judge also made comment that he was not under pressure from other people, nor did he play a minor role or a subordinate role. In other words, it was entirely of his doing, the judge said. Coming to harm, the judge looked at 2 things. Firstly, the effect, the corrosive effect the judge said that this has on the administration of justice, in the ability of the court to deliver justice. Just taking an aside from that, because you would hope that if you were the subject of some abuse yourself, you would hope that an injunction to stop someone from doing it would be effective. And if that was ineffective, then that is essentially the collapse and the corrosion of the administration of justice, which is what the judge is referring to here. So again, whether you support all of this or not, this is much wider than just this one case. This is the effect that it has on the administration of justice as a whole. Secondly, the judge said that it amounted to unlawful defamation, continuing unlawful defamation of the original claimant, having a further injurious impact on his reputation. Although the judge said there was no specific evidence about that, so the judge is not really looking at that, which says to me that the judge is looking really at this from the standpoint whilst considering potential injurious impact on the original claimant. Moreover, the impact on the administration of justice as a whole. The judge also looked to previous findings of contempt and listed those out here. First of all, receiving a suspended committal order of 3 months. So that would have been 3 months in prison, but that was suspended. That was filming a trial at the Crown Court and putting that trial at risk. The Divisional Court found him in contempt for breach of a reporting restriction, again putting a long-running and important criminal trial at risk. And thirdly, having been found in contempt for failing to attend a hearing for oral examination in connection with these proceedings, which you'll be familiar with from more recently. In mitigation, the judge did take into account that he did comply with this injunction to the letter for a period of time between February 23 for around 18 months. But also, for those of you that are concerned for Tommy Robinson and his time in prison, the judge did also take into account in the form of mitigation the impact that prison conditions is likely to have on him. The judge said and recognised that it's well known that the high prison population in adult male prisons has impacted on prison conditions. This has resulted not only in prisoners being held in crowded conditions, but also much further away from home. You see, when you go into a prison, it should be within a reasonable distance from your home, but with the crowding situation in the prisons, prisoners have been held much further from home than they really ought to. However, despite the early releasing of prisoners recently, the judge said that there is no evidence that these recent releases have had any substantial change on that position. The government has not communicated to the court that prisoners' conditions have returned to normal. So despite having released some prisoners early, that hasn't really improved. There is no evidence that that has improved the situation and conditions for prisoners. Further, the judge said there's a particularly onerous impact on Tommy Robinson because he is well known and his views are well known and they provoke considerable hostility. The judge says the prison governor has a legal obligation to take reasonable steps to keep him safe. The discharge of that obligation may impact the conditions in which that he is kept, reducing his ability to associate with others. So here, the judge is expressly recognising that because he's well known, because his views are well known, because his views provoke hostility, and obviously given the aforementioned crowding situation in the prisons, the judge emphasised that the prison governor has a legal obligation to take reasonable steps to keep him safe. But the judge also recognised that this will impact how he is kept in custody, meaning he may well have to be kept in isolation. That's the way that I read this, because it will reduce his ability to associate with others because of the risk that that would put to him. So the prison governor has a duty to keep him safe, and that in turn means keep him safe from others from whom he may suffer harm whilst in custody. Therefore, the governor may have to take a decision to keep him in isolated custody, and that will obviously impact the conditions on him being kept in custody. However, in contrast to all of that, the judge then went on to emphasise that he has not shown remorse for breaches of the order. It would be surprising if he had done, the judge said, and any expression of remorse would have been likely to be required analysis before being accepted as genuine. You see, when someone shows genuine remorse and they regret what they've done, that might have a mitigating factor and reduce the sentence that they might otherwise get. On the other hand, the judge did say that he took into account that Tommy Robinson was motivated by desire to ensure that the public had what he saw as the truth. In some cases, the judge said, particularly involving acts of civil disobedience, riots and protests and so on, the courts have referred to a bargain or mutual understanding that arises out of a form of dialogue with the court. The practical effect is that a lesser sanction can be justifiably imposed where that is likely to be sufficient to ensure future compliance with the court's orders. In other words, the courts sometimes might apply a lesser sanction if defendants to a contempt application might otherwise comply with those orders going forward. But in this case, the judge said he's shown no inclination to comply with the order, and to respect the rights of others. So the judge is less likely to apply a lesser sanction because the judge saw it. He was more likely to continue disobeying those orders moving forward. So all of this, even if you hadn't followed it already, would have led to a more severe sanction. Now, the total custodial sanction available here is 2 years imprisonment for each act of contempt. Although when it comes to totality, that means taking everything together, looking at each of the individual acts of contempt, and the judge said to look at all of these 10 separate breaches, it would not be appropriate that each one were given its own sanction and just add them all together. So the judge said that would be a disproportionate sanction. So the judge obviously said we're not going to look at this as 10 breaches times 2 years maximum each. The judge said the correct approach is to assess the sanction that is just and proportionate in all the circumstances to cover all the breaches of the injunction, applying with the appropriate adjustment for overarching guideline of the Sentencing Council. Finally, the judge looked at admissions and the time spent in custody. Now, the admissions were very late, so ordinarily one is only entitled to 1/10 of any punishment at that opportunity by the time it comes to trial. That would have been 1/3 if it was at the first available opportunity. The time spent in custody was 3 days. And after going through all of the calculations, the judge said in the outcome for the 10 breaches of the injunction, which each amount to a contempt of court, I commit the defendant to prison for a term of 18 months less 3 days. But I also, the judge said, order the defendant to pay the costs of the applications and adjourn the determinations of any amount to be paid on account. So this is where the costs come in. So the judge has also ordered costs to be paid, and they will go to another hearing for detailed assessment unless they are agreed. The costs submitted thus far are £80,350.82, and they seek a payment on account of £50,000. Immediately. As I say, if these are not agreed, then they'll go to a further hearing to determine the precise costs. Interestingly, although I don't believe this will be pursued, the judge said he does have the right to appeal under Section 13 of the Administration of Justice Act 1960, and he doesn't require further permission. So the takeaway from this is threefold, really. First of all, the judge was taking this seriously because of the previous acts of contempt, which he's already had a suspended committal for. The seriousness of these breaches, because he was intentionally breaching it, and he knew that. I mean, if you've watched any of the snippets of his videos online, you will know that he knew that he was breaching this injunction. He was doing it deliberately because, as the judge recognized, he wanted to share what he saw as the truth with all of you who may have watched those videos, or even the video that he published in breach of the injunction. And in all of that, the judge took that seriously because it was a corrosion on the administration of justice. And interestingly, if you recall, the judge did make a point of saying that a party who has lost a case is entitled to appeal. They are entitled to disagree with the result, and they are entitled to criticize the result, but they are not entitled to disobey a court injunction. The second takeaway from this is that the judge recognized the risk to Tommy Robinson in custody because of who he is, what his views are, and the risk posed by others. And that in turn will have an impact on how he is kept in custody. Meaning, on my reading of these reasons here, the governor of the prison may have no alternative but to keep him in isolated custody. And finally, of course, there is the costs element. So as it stands, those costs are just over £80,000. They will go to assessment if they're not agreed, and the initial payment will be one of £50,000. So I thought I'd cover some of those points in this video for you because I very much doubt that all of the media will cover each of those points, if any of them. But if you do like me to go through these bits and pieces where the judge does recognize that you may not agree with these decisions, please do subscribe to my channel, like the video, and help to share this to a wider audience, because that really is, in my view, one of the best ways for you to get the full picture about what's really going on here. The judge has certainly recognized that some people disagree with this decision. He recognized the risk to Tommy Robinson in custody, but also, and rather importantly, the judge recognized that he needed to protect the integrity of the administration of justice, because without it, society really would fall apart. So please do leave me your thoughts and comments down below. Remember to like the video and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.